Well, welcome to Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening news. It's time to queer up the news. It's 8 p.m. Thursday, January 20, 2022, and we are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
Hola, mi gente, and thank you for joining Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens, you will see it. Queer News Tonight is supported by viewers like you. We are part of the partnership between Happening Out Television Network and Hotspots Magazine. Hotspots is celebrating 36 years of the LGBTQ plus experience. We bring you the best of LGBTQ plus news, entertainment, and support of our community.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson. Let's welcome anchor FayWhat. She's a radio and television personality and has a popular blog and YouTube channel aiming to unite the L and the G together. And apparently she has a motion problem too. She's a hostess and MC to many South Florida events, an animal advocate and owner of Fay's Fur Family. And also, make sure you catch the FayWhat Show, the first LGBTQ plus morning show Mondays at 9 a.m. Eastern and then anytime on demand. Good evening, Fay.
Good evening, guys. And coming soon to Roku, baby. You can see my face on a big 72-inch TV right before you know it. Just saying. All right, let's welcome anchor John Hayden. John's been a journalist for as long as I've been alive, 27 years, and now works for several South Florida outlets, including SFGN, covering politics, arts, and the bar scene, of course, mostly for the latest on Happy Hours. He spent much of his career covering the stupidity and scandals of Hollywood and interviewed nearly every big name in TV, movies, and music. John considers the time he had to sit and interview Shirley MacLaine after she yelled at him as the scariest 4 minutes of his life. Good evening, John. How are you, Bobby?
Good evening, Faye. I'm fantastic. It's Thursday. I'm ready to get this weekend party started. But first, let's welcome anchor David Hopkins. David is known in South Florida for his charity work in the leather community and is an officer for the Lambda Men's Brotherhood. LMB has helped raise more than $250,000 for at-need nonprofits in our community. He is also part of the production team here at Happening Out Television Network, helping to bring you your favorite shows to life. Good evening, David.
Hey, good evening, everybody. And if you're not going to the family-friendly My Hollywood Pride on Saturday, come to the not-so-family-friendly Lambda Men's Brotherhood pool party in leather. It is a charity fundraiser, noon to 5. Let's welcome anchor Gregg Shapiro.
I want to meet that boy in your poster.
Oh, there's going to be lots of those. A 1999 inductee into the Chicago LGBT Hall of Fame, Gregg is the author of 2 short story collections and 5 books of poetry. As an entertainment journalist, his celebrity interviews and music reviews run in a variety of regional LGBTQ plus and mainstream publications and websites, and his Screensaver movie review column can be found in South Florida Gay News, San Francisco's Bay Area Reporter, RottenTomatoes.com, and more. Good evening, Gregg.
Happy National Butter Crunch Day. Not to be confused with National Butt Munch Day.
That's every day here.
We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and this evening we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast. And here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Thursday, January 20th.
Well, we begin by queering up trans rights. Elliot Page, Lilly Wachowski take on Arkansas's anti-trans law. A group of more than 50 notable transgender Americans, including actor Elliot Page and director Lilly Wachowski, filed an amicus brief Wednesday in support of a lawsuit looking to overturn a law in Arkansas that would limit health care for trans youth. Why? The friend of the court brief, filed by Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund, comes amid a lawsuit against Arkansas's first-in-the-nation law, which prohibits doctors from providing medically necessary treatment to transgender youth or referring patients for gender-affirming care. Doing so, the group said, would deny young trans kids happiness and joy in their lives. Page wrote about his experience after transitioning, saying, quote, I couldn't believe the amount of energy I had, ideas, how my imagination flourished, because the constant discomfort and pain around that aspect of my body was gone.
Wow. I mean, I can't believe we're telling this story, and I hate this. You know, think about it. It's youth, okay? We're not going to allow certain medical things for youth to get. I can't even wrap my head around this, like, completely. And Elliot Page, I am loving you, man, more and more. You know, I wasn't a big fan before, and I really kind of I expected him to not come to bat for us. I'm sorry that I felt that way. And he is totally putting himself out there, representing us to, like, the fullest degree. I'm super happy with him.
We're really lucky to have someone as eloquent also as Elliot Page, who can put these things into words that even someone in Arkansas might be able to understand.
You know, I interviewed Elliot before he started transitioning, and always a great interview, very giving as an interview subject, but I can just tell a difference when he does press today versus when I interviewed him, you know, back like in the Inception days and the amazing performance in Juno. So yes, you are just happier when you can be yourself. This isn't a revelation, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Wait, I want to make sure that I'm clear in terms of the point you just made and the difference that you can tell. Explain that to us.
When I watch now, there just seems to be more of a liveliness.
Not that he, right? Like
more comfortable. Not that he wasn't a good interview back in the day, but you can just tell that I think maybe he feels more comfortable in the roles he's accepting now. I mean, certainly he wouldn't play Juno.
And
in his own skin, yeah.
And it comes across.
And there's also been multiple studies shown that when transgender youth can begin hormone replacement and living authentically at a younger age, it greatly reduces chances of suicide and mental health issues in adulthood. You know, forcing children to fit into something they're not is child abuse. Whether it's the crazy parents who sometimes, you know, force a child. There's all the horror movies about the people who force a child to dress a certain way because they wanted a daughter to be born, but the person's not that way. This is doing the exact same thing as in those horror movies in real life, forcing these children to fit what your ideal of them is instead of letting them be themselves.
You know, the reason the Arkansas law receives so much focus, just to make sure that the LGBT and Q portions of our community know, I know the T knows. The reason Arkansas's law is so viciously bad and receives so much national attention, and like in this lawsuit, from national support, national celebrities in terms of filing suit against it, is this is not a reflection of not recognizing the trans community. This is not a law that says you can't play girls' sports, for example, and the various different versions that we're seeing in Florida and in Tennessee and in Texas. This is an affirmation, a positive affirmation to prevent health care. It takes it a step farther that says not only do we not allow or recognize you in general terms, we are preventing you from having the necessary medical care that you need. And that's why this law that was passed in Arkansas is so viciously terrible. And we will follow this very, very closely. Arkansas is one of the most repressive places in America in the passage of this law.
Next, we queer up the USA. New data reveals LGBTQ plus wages earn 90 cents on the dollar. Yesterday, the Human Rights Campaign Foundation, the educational arm of the Human Rights Campaign, the nation's largest lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer civil rights organization, released new data outlining the pay disparities of LGBTQ plus workers, with a particular emphasis on the disproportionate wage gap that transgender, non-binary, and LGBTQ plus people of color face. The 2021 LGBTQ plus community survey, administered by Community Marketing and Insights and supported by the HRC Foundation, found full-time LGBTQ plus workers earn about $900 weekly, which is 90% of what the typical worker earns in the U.S. Put another way, LGBTQ plus workers earn about 90 cents for every dollar that the typical worker earns. LGBTQ plus people of color, the transgender women and men, and non-binary individuals earn the least when compared to their white or cisgender LGBTQ plus peers. Furthermore, LGBTQ plus working women who have similar earnings to all women earn less than all men and LGBTQ plus working men. Additionally, transgender people and non-binary, genderqueer, and two-spirit workers earn significantly less than both working men and women. Wow.
pay disparity is a terrible thing. I also want to comment that I wish I was making $900 a week. So if you'd like to sponsor Happening Out Television Network, please email us. But yeah, pay disparities exist, especially, one of the big things that jobs like to do is tell people, oh, don't talk about your pay. Your coworkers don't need to know how much you make. That is a tactic to let them pay you less than you deserve. Don't listen to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's sad because, a lot of people don't want to hire LGBTQ plus, maybe we're too flamboyant or we're just too extra, because most of us are, so we'll take whatever job is given to us because we need to pay our bills and we don't want to go back out on the streets or doing something illegal. So we'll deal with the pay cut, knowing that our coworkers are making more, working harder because we're afraid to lose our jobs also. And it's just like normal times, that LGBTQ plus world.
Mm-hmm. I think it also speaks to the gig economy. I mean, like myself, I left a job after, I changed careers after 25 years, because I think when you set your own wage, when you tell people, I can fire you as a client just as easily as you can fire me, I think it helps. And I think that there are a lot of more independent contractors, not only in the gay community, but across the board. So I think it's good that we're finding out where the pay disparity is, and that a good significant portion of the population, should have written that better, is taking control of their wages and saying, this is what I am worth, and they're sticking to it.
The HRC survey reveals what I think we probably all suspected in advance, and it's really unfair. It's a reflection of fairness. There is one stream of good news in it. When I moved to South Florida, and specifically to Fort Lauderdale in Broward County, I learned a term that I had never heard before, and that term was majority minority. Broward County, millions of people, majority minority county. And that means that Al's face, generally, although I am in a bucket, which is gay, but white men are not the majority of Broward County. Minority representation of women, gay, Black, Latino, etc., are the majority population. The good news here in this survey, if there is any good news, is gay is treated just like every other minority, less than. At least we're the same as all of the other minorities. Women make less, Latinos make less, Black makes less, trans makes less, gay, LGBTQ makes less. White men and Asians make more. The good news is we're all in that bucket together. The bad news is we all don't unite together to say this must end. And you know what this represents? This is a clear illustration of systemic racism and systemic discrimination. That's what this survey represents. And until we all say that women and Latinos and Black and gay and are in the same bucket, and it's going to stop. White men do not rule the world. It's not going to stop because it's systemic. And that's what this survey shows all of us.
Well, speaking of job markets where people are not represented well, we're going to queer up health. COVID has forced LGBTQ sex workers to gamble with their safety. Unite Sex Workers is a trade union branch in the United Kingdom organizing for better working conditions and to change sex work industry from within. Among its aims is to establish worker status for strippers and sex workers, which bestows basic employment rights such as sick pay and annual leave. Its work has even become more important during pandemic, which has seen strip clubs fall quiet, close down, and has seen sex workers often forced to gamble with their safety in order to make a living. While some people have been able to work remotely during the pandemic, thanks to OnlyFans, Just for Fans, and similar, many people's livelihoods depend on in-person contact. To make matters worse, sex workers are classed as self-employed, meaning they can't access sick pay or other benefits. The result is that many sex workers are left struggling to make ends meet if they test positive for COVID-19. These struggles are felt by sex workers globally as clubs continue to close. Queer News Tonight reported last week on the closing of Swinging Richards in Atlanta after 30 years due to the pandemic, leaving many area sex workers without a safe and steady place of employment. I have many friends who are in my chosen family who are sex workers, whether it's through escort work, adult entertainment, dancers, and this is a continual thing. When you are a gig worker who have no protections and your work can be considered illegal in a lot of places, but it's valid work. It's so difficult. One minor sickness can destroy your life, can send you homeless, and people need protections.
Think about it. Sex workers don't have, they don't have the unemployment. They don't have the benefits. They can't just go to the hospital if something's wrong. Like David said, if something occurs, that's it. You're done. And they've been talking about having a union like this for sex workers for years. Why? What's stopping this from happening? Religious people, maybe. People don't want to talk about sex. It's the truth, but it's my body. I should be able to do whatever the hell I want to do with it. And if I want to charge people, I've done less for free.
And it's by the way, you're here at Queer News tonight.
Yeah.
And it's yet another challenge for sex workers, who in many cases are already putting themselves at risk in their line of work. So it's just another thing compounding it.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah, sex work is real work. Sex workers need protections legally, health-wise. There needs to be education out there. And it is, I think, Faye, a big part of evangelicals who have this stigma against sex in general, which have long fought against sex work. Sex, it really is the world's oldest profession, and it is a profession.
Yeah.
And it's really not that far from being a server or a bartender. You're just selling your body in a different way.
Yeah.
It's stupid that this discrimination happens.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think is positive about this story and us telling this story is it's like Pornhub. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we didn't talk about the porn industry, adult entertainment industry. Today, Pornhub is one of the most popular websites on this planet. And the ones that don't talk about adult entertainment and porn, if we label it that way, are the evangelicals that are still living in their Puritan past. But the vast majority of Americans are consuming pornography or adult video entertainment in some form or not. The same thing here. Sex workers and those that work in the sexual industry is a legitimate process that Americans and probably people all over this world want to participate in. And only the evangelicals are wagging their fingers and their tongues at people that consume in this industry just like all kinds of other industries. And then they go secret and do all of their kinky fetish things. By the way, have you been to Liberty University?
The bathrooms are fun.
Oh my. Speaking of education, now we queer up education. Minnesota School District partners for Pride Resources for Toddlers. A Minnesota school district has partnered with an organization that offers LGBTQ affirming curricula for students as young as 3 years old. Minnesota St. Paul Public Schools Office of Equity is working with Amaze, an equity and training consulting firm to, quote, to further develop culturally responsive classrooms in which every student can learn about themselves and their peers while engaged in curriculum connected to reading and writing standards, end quote. Catering to young children as well as adolescents, the company's programming focuses on fostering gender and racial inclusivity in schools. For example, Amaze advertises Pride Resources for children as young as toddlers for the purpose of, quote, supporting children with gay and lesbian family members and understanding gender diversity. While the school district has entered into a business relationship with Amaze, it has not yet specified which products it will apply in the elementary and secondary classrooms.
What a big difference from our first story, right? Where we're withholding a health care to trans youth, and this is like enabling and supporting. Like, how wonderful. Imagine if all of us as kids were supported in this way. I mean, how different the whole entire world would be. And I love some of the books that they have. My Princess Boy. I love that. Another, When Aiden Became a Brother. How about When Faye was gay? I love that.
The thing that amuses me the most about this story is when Al found it for tonight's episode, it was in National Review, which is a right-wing website. And the article was written, these are all supposed to be scary things for people apparently. And I'm like, okay, this is great. Like teaching young kids how to deal with the fact that they may be picked on for having gay parents. Why is that a bad thing? Like, I don't see what the shock and the terror is of this. You know, it's setting people up for a successful, caring, empathetic life.
Yeah.
You know, it's...
And you know, we give giving kids the vocabulary to express themselves, and we say it's for, you know, for kids with gay parents, but it also will speak to the kids that have straight parents but are going to need to be able to verbalize their feelings at some point very soon. But more importantly, it gives their peers the ability to verbalize with them as they go through, because most of the kids are going to be straight, but they're going to be able to identify a little easier with those gay kids when they come out younger and younger.
And there'll be less bullying because of it.
And that's also the difference between Arkansas and, say, Minnesota, which, again, we talked about on a recent show, how it's been a liberal bastion for so many years, in spite of also being, you know, the home of Michelle Bachmann and Garrison Keillor, notorious homophobe.
Yeah. You know what's interesting to me is I'm looking at our monitors and I'm looking at this headline. I have a few friends that are going to see Pride and Toddlers, some kind of educational indoctrination of toddlers. I have 3 friends of mine. You've probably heard of them. I have 3 friends named Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham.
Your bestie.
Their heads are going to explode on this National Review story, and our telling of the National Review conservative review. The National Review, as David has said, was designed to shock the evangelicals and the Tuckers and the Seans and the Lauras to say, isn't this terrible? And then they set their hairs on fire. But really, it's not that at all. Because in the toddler or elementary school or middle school student, they have a gay father, or they have a gay brother or a gay sister, or they might have a trans family member or whatever it is. This education program that St. Paul is doing with Amaze is really genius, because it decides, wait, let's talk about the positive aspects of the diversity that already exists in your family. We're not creating diversity, it's already there. And so, by the way, a white family member, if you are in a mixed race family, or you have a black brother or sister and you are identified in something else, or brown or whatever, how can we all embrace each other in equality? That requires education, and right from the very beginning. So while Tucker has set his hair on fire, families in St. Paul, Minnesota, because of the forward-thinking, equity-educating, and really family-loving approach that they take, are actually improving so many people's lives, while Tucker's hair burns. Okay, Tucker.
Next, we report on our partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church here in Fort Lauderdale. We're broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine in supporting that partnership. Happening Out Television Network broadcasts the largest LGBTQ+ religious live broadcast in the world, as more than 30,000 watch every Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Watch this.
I'm Kishai Martin, board member of Unity Coalition, and Sunshine Cathedral is my queer church.
Well, now we're going to finish tonight's Queer News headlines with a segment we call LGBTQ+ Flash News.
And the first person to flash you, this guy. The American LGBTQ+ Museum announces its first executive director. The American LGBTQ+ Museum announced Tuesday it has selected the organization's first executive director, Ben Garcia. The news comes almost 5 years to the day that the museum was first planned. Garcia has worked in museums for more than 20 years. He's led similar institutions and has advocated for LGBTQ+ rights. He will lead the institution's exhibition development, advocacy efforts, communications and community outreach and implementation, and fundraising strategy. The American LGBTQ+ Museum will be the first museum dedicated to queer culture and history in New York City. Museum board member and CEO of Translash, Imara Jones, said, quote, "A key goal of this museum is to right many of the historic wrongs committed through the deliberate erasure of the gender and racial diversity of our community for political expediency. Ben understands that it is essential to center those left and left behind in order for LGBTQ plus people to have a just future that endures and works for all," end quote. And New York has lots of great museums. They have a tenement museum which looks at the hardships of immigration and immigrants back in the 19th century. So I can't wait to see this. I'm sure it's going to build on on New York City's history of true storytelling.
It's an exciting museum, and it's one that's long overdue, so we welcome it.
Speaking of overdue, since it's taken 5 years just to get somebody to run the place, I am worried that it may never actually come to fruition.
Well, having the American LGBTQ plus museum come to the focus of hopefully opening, and now with this executive director, it provides normalcy in our community to see museum development. And speaking of that, congratulations. It reminds me of the success of the Stonewall National Museum and Archives. And guess where they are? That is Fort Lauderdale and Wilton Manors, Florida. Museums are valuable.
It's about time. Jeez. Okay. LGBTQ plus flash news. As voting rights fail, the hardest hit will be LGBTQ plus people of color. As Senate Democrats on Wednesday failed to pass voting rights legislation in the face of Republican opposition, LGBTQ plus advocates grew worried about how rising voter restrictions being passed in states will disproportionately harm LGBTQ plus Americans, especially people of color and people with disabilities who face multiple intersecting barriers. While the White House had previously passed legislation that would reverse some of those rules, a merged version of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act was unable to pass in the Senate without needed support from moderate Democrats on changing the filibuster, leaving the future of federal voting rights legislation unclear. 19 states passed 34 laws last year restricting voting access, the most tracked by the Brennan Center for Justice since it began counting in 2011. 7 of those states have among the highest proportion of LGBT people in the country per Gallup data tracked by the Williams Institute at the UCLA School of Law, including Georgia and Florida, which enacted far-reaching voting restrictions. Voting rights is going to be all we need to be paying attention for this year. I mean, it is of the utmost importance and what we need to be focusing most of our attention towards.
You're absolutely right, Faye. I disagree with one line in that story that you just read, though. The future of federal voting rights legislation is not unclear. It's not going to happen until we elect enough Democrats that are going to get it right.
True.
And sadly, this is just another shameful moment in American history, and it's heartbreaking.
I was disappointed in the people who were arguing that the Senate and Congress did not have the authority to change voting rights laws nationally, but I applaud Amy Klobuchar, who read the Constitution to the Senate to show them that yes, Congress has that authority.
Let's connect the dots. In 2006, the 1965 Voting Rights Act was extended by a unanimous vote of the U.S. Senate, all Republicans and all Democrats. In 2016, we elected Donald Trump, and through the next 4 years, we went through what we saw. We watched him claim that the election was fraudulent until January 6, 2021, when they literally tried to stop our democracy. In that time, the largest number of anti-voting laws have been passed that have been tracked in the last 10 years. Connect the dots. What's going on here? The Trump election, the fraudulent claims, the January 6th attack on our Capitol, and now all of these laws to try to restrict people to vote. What are they trying to do?
LGBTQ plus flash news. 33rd annual GLAAD Media Award recognized trans and black LGBTQ plus stories. The list of this year's nominees for the 33rd annual GLAAD Media Awards features some of the biggest names as well as a wide variety of diverse and marginalized identities in LGBTQ Hollywood, in music, and even at Forbes. RuPaul's Drag Race Season 13 finalist Gottmik announced the nominees live Wednesday via the TikTok channel of GLAAD, the world's largest lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer media advocacy organization. Among this year's nominees, Lil Nas X, Pose, Eternals, Sex Education, RuPaul's Drag Race, We Are Here, and more. It's great to have GLAAD. I'm glad that we have GLAAD to help us celebrate our media achievements.
You know, I'm a huge comic book nerd, and I sadly just saw Eternals recently, and Phastos' relationship was inspiring.
Yes.
He had a loving, supportive husband, a great child, and it was just such normal representation, and I'm here for it and hope to see more.
You know, I don't know why Tony Lima is singing in my head right now. He's going, wait, can anybody guess?
Oh, don't
what
say
he
it, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it.
Representation matters. And that's what GLAAD does and recognizes.
Okay, one that should be on that list that I'm presently watching and all over, the morning show. Hello, Bradley is getting it on with the doctor from ER, Juliana Margulies. That should be on there. And two, I love that Gottmik was the one to announce the winners today.
Yeah.
I just know that noticeably off the list is Al's friends, Tucker, Sean, and Laura. So are you okay? And if so, if you need to talk after the show, I'm here for you.
I need some counseling. I need some counseling.
Let's face it, if Laura Ingraham had gay friends, her makeup wouldn't look like that. But LGBTQ plus flash news. Translation, Jeopardy LGBTQ Amy Schneider watch. Historic streak through January 20th continues. The Happening Out television network is home to Translation, the world's only transgender talk show by the trans community for our allies. In the spirit of that, we've been very closely following Trans Jeopardy champion Amy Schneider as she continues her winning streak. As of tonight's episode, she has won 37 consecutive games. If, let's face it, when she wins tomorrow, she will tie for second for the number of consecutive wins on the show. On tonight's episode, Amy correctly guessed the question for Final Jeopardy, what is Frontier, for a nightly win of $71,400 and a total winnings of $1,253,200. This girl is going to go all the way. I don't think she'll make most money won, but she is going to break that 74 episode record. I swear it's going to happen. I can't wait to see it.
Girl, you scared us to death this week. You got almost every double Jeopardy this week wrong and still won. Okay, we're happy you won because we're watching you and we're reporting on you every night at Queer News Tonight. But I'm happy you won double Jeopardy, and the $70,000 was a nice payday.
Who is Amy Schneider? Question. The woman that's killing it and is going to win it all, bitches. Oh, wait, maybe not the bitches.
And this is the TV person here. The ratings are getting amazing numbers right now. She's Jeopardy has always won its time slot. It was against me for 13 years, but it's trending younger. Like younger people are tuning in. It's not just winning the 55 plus demographic. So younger people tuning in, middle America is still tuning in to see it. It's great. You go, girl.
John, how long have I known you?
About 8 months.
8 months. I've been against you for 8 months too. All right. Well, let's.
Greg,
Queer
comment.
Welcome to the family, John.
Sorry.
Just want to say that it's a thrill to be watching history being made when she's on, and I hope she continues her winning streak.
I'm sorry, Greg. I stepped on you.
Not a problem.
Short. Yeah. All right. So let's queer up entertainment. And by the way, we're going to keep following Amy Schneider every single night through this
Team
streak.
Amy.
We're going to follow you. Let's queer up entertainment. We've talked about the Oscars coming, so we wanted to focus on here are the best LGBTQ plus movies of the 2000s so far. The LGBTQ plus community has been represented in films since it began over 100 years ago. However, the depictions of LGBTQ plus community have not always been flattering due to equal parts to historic censorship and systemic prejudice.
After the Stonewall riots in 1969, which were instrumental in societal change, queer movies began to make their way into the mainstream in the 1970s, as the gay community was seen as a viable target market.
It wasn't until the 1990s, however, that several independent filmmakers began properly representing the queer community with engaging and empathetic stories, eventually known as the New Queer Cinema movement.
From this point onwards, society continued to progress in an upward motion, with Hollywood heavyweights even taking on queer film roles. With all that in mind, here are the best LGBTQ+ movies from the 2000s, which is a decade, by the way, Al, chosen for their impact on queer cinema.
Brokeback Mountain. Brokeback Mountain is an adaptation by Ang Lee based on Annie Proulx's original short story. It follows the story of Ennis Del Mar, the late Heath Ledger, and Jack Twist, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, a cowboy and a ranch hand who secretly fall in love while working together in the summer of 1963. It is regarded as a major milestone in gay cinema, despite its straight male leads. It is also considered the first major mainstream LGBTQ+ film.
Milk, directed by Gus Van Sant. Milk recounts the true story of Harvey Milk, America's first openly gay elected official, I believe California's first openly gay elected official, and his emblazoned battle for gay rights. The movie follows Milk as he helped to shape the community for LGBTQ people in San Francisco in the 1970s when homophobia was still rampant. Sean Penn won several awards for his brilliant performance in this critically acclaimed film.
A Single Man. Fashion designer Tom Ford's directorial debut is an incredibly stylish and emotional film based on Christopher Irshworth's novel of the same name. A Single Man tells the story of George Falconer, Colin Firth, a British university professor living in LA who becomes severely depressed after his longtime partner is killed in a car accident. Firth, despite not having many scenes, puts his scene time to good use and uplifts this otherwise sad tale, for which he was nominated for an Academy Award.
Gay cinema also rocks out. Hedwig and the Angry Inch, the rock opera, is John Cameron Mitchell's adaptation of his off-Broadway musical. It follows the story of the titular character Hedwig, played by Mitchell, an aspiring rock star, pardon me, who flees from East Germany to America after a botched gender affirmation surgery. The amazing original music steals the show in this fun, campy cult classic, which is also directed, written, and stars John Cameron Mitchell's in his debut.
Crazy, directed by the late Jean-Marc Vallée. This powerful coming-of-age story is about a French-Canadian boy named Zachary, played by Marc-André Grondin, as he struggles with his budding homosexuality and the homophobia in the 60s and 70s. The film was a critically acclaimed box office success and boasts a stellar soundtrack.
Saving Face. Directed by Alice Wu, Saving Face tells the story of Wilhelmina, a Chinese-American surgeon and closeted lesbian who falls in love with a woman and must keep it a secret from her conservative mother, played by Joan Chen. The script is loosely based on Wu's personal experience of coming out to her traditional Chinese mother. Not only does it tell an LGBTQ+ love story, but it also features an all-Asian American cast, which according to IndieWire, almost didn't happen.
Well, without these breakout movies, the representation we see in Hollywood now would be very different. What other movies do you think help shape the films we see today? Let us know in the comments on Facebook or YouTube.
Well, I concur with the list, absolutely, but I would add all from 2000 to 2009, I would add Big Eden, The Bubble, Mysterious Skin, 20 Centimeters, Kissing Jessica Stein, and Short Bus.
Greg, I want to ask you real quick, because you write for Rotten Tomatoes. Would the films that we talk about here being so iconic, would they all have great Rotten Tomatoes reviews, do you think?
Oh, I would say almost every single one of them is going to have high reviews, okay. Absolutely.
Who would you add, Al? Sordid Lives. You got to put Sordid Lives in there. Come on, like how is it not on there? I Love You, Philip Morris. That was also a good one. And Transamerica. Those were three of mine that had needed to be on that list for sure.
And I know that we're talking about the 2000s, but I don't think Brokeback Mountain was the first foundational gay movie, maybe of the modern era. But let's not forget Philadelphia, which really set a tone.
But that's not 2000s.
No, I know. I said we're talking about 2000s, but I think Philadelphia was really a.
Well, we want to go back. We can go Bound. Yeah. Bound was huge. We can go The Crying Game.
Yeah.
The Crying Game, and we could go back.
We've apparently lost control.
The reason these are all so important, though, is because the 90s gay cinema was targeted towards the gay community, and the 2000s, late 90s, 2000s, it really became broad stream appeal. Brokeback Mountain was a gay story, but it wasn't for the gays. It was for everyone. And I think that's a big, like, I loved Trick from 1999. It's a great movie. Short Bus is absolutely phenomenal, and as a sex positive person, I love the storyline behind it. But these were movies that were meant for general consumption, which was very unusual.
Yeah. You know, before we move on, Faye's getting ready to take us out of the show. The one thing I will say about Brokeback Mountain is it was a broad general audience. However, it was catnip for the gay boys too. If you go back to Brokeback Mountain, a lot of people do not realize if you watch the original version of Brokeback Mountain and you're watching it on your television and you can pause, start. In that scene where they jump off the cliff into the water, they are totally naked and you see both of their penises. You go back.
Al took a nice classy story.
And all of you boys have paused it right there at that moment, haven't you? I didn't even know that.
At least a dozen times. Oh, and by the way, not so much.
Maybe you should spend more time on Pornhub. It's easier.
Today it is much easier. Exactly. All right.
So that is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ plus evening news show. Is our community important to you?
Then help us by liking and subscribing. Ring the bell for updates. Share this news with your friends and family.
Post this broadcast in the many groups you're a member of. Tonight's stories about our community deserve the attention of your family and friends.
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support.
Well, if our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world. This is the only place in the world that tells these type of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and sound. And that's going to even get better. Next, we're almost there. February 1st, we move to broadcast television. And we're going to be broadcasting Queer News Tonight in Roku, Google and Apple Television, and Amazon Fire Television. So stay tuned. It's going to even get better. This is completely the passion of Happening Out Television Network and Queer News Tonight. And I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson. And on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including FayWhat, John Hayden, David Hopkins, and Gregg Shapiro, we will see you daily at 8 p.m. Good night. LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are